What I'm typically coming across when I'm inside of Dibs, in terms of the older solicitations,
Hmm.
I'm noticing that quite a few of the part numbers that are in the solicitations do not match the nomenclature for the approved cage manufacturers. And I'm running into this quite frequently, so it's very difficult to get a quote for an incorrect part number that's associated with the NSN.
This is true. That's a big problem. Well, let me ask you this question before I answer. When you see that, are you reaching out to the approved source?
Correct. And they're saying that, hey, this nomenclature does not even match their numbering system for their part numbers.
Okay. Now, do
So
you tell them the NSN number?
yes, I provide NSN numbers, and again, they're not necessarily familiar with NSN.
First of all, Corey, you never tell them the NSN numbers. They don't know what that is. That's number one. And they're not supposed to know necessarily unless they're in DLA, unless they're a contractor. NSNs are owned by the federal government. They're created by the federal government. Part numbers are owned by manufacturers. So that is why they have a difficult time communicating with you if it's not about a part number. So what you have to do is, first of all, you need to realize and I don't know if you did this part or not, Corey, but you should not be talking to suppliers that you have not vetted. Here's why. Because you just told them something and you just woke them up. So when you're telling them and giving them information, you could be talking to a distributor. Most manufacturers are not bidding. They're not bidding. Most manufacturers are not bidding. Some of them are, but not a lot of them. Most of them, they don't like to sell. They don't like all of this government stuff. So they work with us as contractors. So number one, if the part number changes, the manufacturer knows it. Now, the distributor, you could be calling a distributor who is an actual supplier, they know it too, but they're not going to know what you're talking about if the part number is incorrect. So, what you have to do is, first of all, do your due diligence. Look them up to see if they're winning. You can use USA spending or you can use DLA. Look them up first. That's the first thing you want to do because you don't want to call a competitor. And that's what used to happen. It doesn't happen to my people anymore because I learned that lesson when I first started DLA. I thought it was because, well, maybe, they don't want women because I was doing hardware practicing for the veterans. And I thought, well, maybe they just don't like to give pricing to women. It had nothing to do with that. It was about we are in their territory. And people have scarcity mindsets. We have more than 500,000 opportunities every single day on DLA. It's probably more than that. And then Corey, as you and I discussed, there are some areas where nobody is focused in those areas, which are gold mines for us. So you want to vet them first, and then you want to see if any one of them is the actual manufacturer because that's where the answer is coming from. Now, you can, if you find out one of them is a distributor, it's okay to talk to them too, because that might be who you have to work with at first until you're able to become a distributor yourself. I always think long term. So you need to make sure you vet them, and then you need to eliminate the ones that are possibly competition. And you guys know I hate that word. I call it the C word. If it's someone that may be bidding against you, because everybody that is on DLA as an approved source is not an approved source. So once you find out who the original, what we call the OEM, once we find out who the original manufacturer is, then you can call them, or you can find out if that original manufacturer has distributors. And then you say to them, listen, you probably want to give them the name of the item. Don't give them the NSN. If you ever talk to someone that gives you an NSN or that asks you what's the NSN, that means they know DLA and they're handling Dibs. So that should tell you, listen to them and politely get off the phone. Because if they start asking you questions about, well, what's the NSN, they're probably going to try to either block you by trying to figure out what you're working on. A lot of people don't do their own work, meaning stuff just sits out there. And they will say to you, if they know what the NSN is, well, we bid on that, so I can't, that's a no bid. That's a no quote. Some of you guys have probably experienced that because that's their strategy for keeping people out. Now, not all of the DLA industries are like that because we have a vast amount of industries, but it's like that in some of the hardware areas. Medical, I don't really have that problem. There are lots of other areas. I don't know that you will have that problem in the area you're in, because I will tell you, some of them, they take for granted their space, meaning they've been winning in that space, but they're not taking care of the client. When I say they're not taking care of the client, if you're taking care of your client and if you're bidding on it, why is it sitting there for 7 months? So all they're trying to do is discourage you, and that used to work. And it doesn't work in my community with my DLA people because I warn you guys about these things, but it used to work. It worked with the veterans. The veterans would be so upset, and they're the ones that really made me dig into DLA. So does that help? Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
finish. One last part. You need to tell them what the old part number was so they can look it up and describe the item, the name of the item, and tell them that you were trying to get pricing on this, but if they say that part doesn't exist anymore, your next question is, what's the new part number? Is it exactly the same? Can it have the same uses? Because that's all you care about. Now you have information that nobody else has because we know nobody else is doing that work. That's a lot of work for you to have to do. Now that means also too, you find out it has a new part number, you can reach out to the contracting officer. I wouldn't give them all the details, but I would let them know that this part exists, but that part number is wrong. I wouldn't tell them that's your ammunition. I would go and bid on it, and then I would put in the comment section that this part number has changed because now you got to be careful because if the supplier is the same, you can still use that cage code. And
Uh,
if it's older, then you can mark it up a little bit. If it's older and it's been sitting there, I think you and I talked about that.